Hi, everyone. Happy to have you for our panel today. Today, in the realm of traditional marketing funnels, we are all familiar with the stages of awareness, consideration, conversion, and beyond. However, in the world of Web3 and blockchain gaming, the journey takes on a all new dimension with added layers of complexity and transparency. So we will examine how game companies use blockchain data for user acquisition, engagement, retention, and explore together with our members the creative approaches and obstacles they have along the way. So very happy to moderate this panel with brilliant people and our BGA members to talk about this and tackle those topics. But first, I would love to have everyone actually introduce themselves and what they do. So starting with you, Philip, if you can.
Sure. Hi everyone. Thanks for having us and for the invitation, Flav. Yep. So basically, I'm co-founder and Cookie Tree CEO. We built a Web3 attribution platform for providing insights both on the on-chain and off-chain side of the data, for making data-driven decisions of our business customers, for better understanding of the all flows of the from off-chain attribution to on-chain conversion. So we are simply bridging those two worlds, as we see that the future internet will be somehow kind of a hybrid, using and utilizing both centralized and decentralized solutions. So we are taking advantage of this transparency of blockchain and also enriching it with a bit of off-chain data. So this is it in a nutshell. Thanks for having us.
Perfect. Thank you, Philip. Eric, your turn, if you can introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Flav. My name is Eric, and I head up the BD and partnership side of W3W. And basically, similar to Philip, we are running a Web3 analytics platform. We focus mainly on the wallet intelligence side, so trying to get as many insights as we can from the wallet itself. And then we can also combine that with the off-chain data if the game is already collecting that and bring that into the platform. I think, what projects now really are missing, and I'm sure, Philip, you have kind of the same feeling, is they don't really understand who the community is. I know we're going to go to that a lot today with the questions. Excited to be here and chat about this topic.
Yeah, definitely we'll tackle that topic together, and that's why it was very important to have your opinion for you two building a platform, an analytic platform, helping game companies bridging the worlds of the web to gaming analytics and Web3. So it's going to be very interesting to have your opinion. Yogev, if you can also introduce yourself.
Of course, happy to be here. Yogev, one of the co-founders and the chief operating officer at OVO. We basically built a game discovery platform that combines both traditional and blockchain games. We operate in the mobile space, and we plan to expand to PC as well. My professional background is I've been in gaming for the past 12 years now, particularly in user acquisition, marketing, and monetization. And again, happy to be here, happy to take part.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thank you, Yogev. Adrian, last but not least.
Hi, I'm Adrian. Thanks for having me as well, Flav, and for organizing this. I'm the founder and CEO at Buildworks. We're a company based out of Germany. We run the Wombat game distribution platform, which works as a hybrid between Web2 and Web3 games. That is the way that we're onboarding a lot of players from Web2 into Web3. So we have about 3.7 million signed up users to date. And we're very much interested in how attribution, how analytics and these kinds of things work, because in the Web2 world, especially in Web2 gaming, it's very, very common and very known what you can do with analytics, with attribution and these kinds of things, right? In the Web3 world, we're basically at the very beginning of what's going on. So for us, that's very, very interesting of what you can do and where this all will actually go.
That's actually a perfect transition because, and I'm going to ask the question to all of you, but starting with you, Adrian, because you mentioned that, I mentioned this marketing funnel, awareness, interest, consideration, conversion, onboarding, engagement, and everything around. How, in your opinion, how is blockchain changing the way game companies understand their customer journey?
There's a lot to that. In the end, for many games, on-chain transactions at least that's what I think in the future will be pretty deep down in the funnel, right? So you will typically onboard users without a wallet, without them needing any kind of blockchain-based assets, right? Because this is where gamers are right now. But as soon as they're there, there's a lot. As soon as you know their wallet address, for instance, right? You know what else they've played, maybe with that same address. You know where they've interacted. You can actually do things that are bound to a particular game, but actually run outside of the game. You can gamify all kinds of things that go on within your game. You can do that. You can gamify things inside of your game that are actually happening outside of your game, right? So you can do something like, hey, trade this NFT, and then you'll get a reward within our game, right? And because you can trace all that. So that is what I think will happen quite a lot, right? That especially deeper down in the funnel, we'll be seeing a lot of interactivity, a lot of interoperability, a lot of looking at data on-chain data specifically, with regards to what have these users done elsewhere on this NFT marketplace, on this DeFi platform, in this other game, and so on, right? And this is where it's going to become incredibly interesting to gather all the data and to see, yeah, what else have they done? How can you market to specific user groups that have done X, Y, Z on that and that platform, and so on, right? This is going to be incredibly interesting. All the while hoping that we'll figure out the privacy issues or the privacy concerns that come with that, obviously.
We're going to talk about that as well. Yeah, totally. Yogev, what's your opinion? You're building an application bridging the Web2 and the Web3 gaming world. So what's your take on the same topic?
Yeah, I think that Adrian touched a lot of points that regards to the same way that we view this industry combines. It's all revolves around interoperability. Interoperability between different games and between different mechanisms of game, whether it's a traditional or quote-unquote Web2 game and whether it's a blockchain game. There are definitely some limits to that. There are a lot of limits to that today. There will be a lot of limits to that when we push forward. The classic example when we first started with the NFT trend back, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, is that any kind of game developer that has some sense would tell you it's not really interoperable if you're talking about game assets. You cannot use, for example, a specific gun from a Call of Duty game in another fantasy game. It doesn't really work. But the way that we view it is that you can basically take those assets and liquefy it. And that is how we look at interoperability. Now, coming back to the user acquisition point of view, for the listeners that didn't see your email, you laid out perfectly and beautifully this beautiful funnel of how any kind of marketeer looks at onboarding new users, starting at awareness and going all the way to advocacy. So those are like your super fans. I think that we as blockchain gaming companies and developers, we need to very much focus on the top of the funnel right now. I think that what we have, the challenges that we have right now as an industry are regards to mass markets and regards to stagnation in growth. That is basically what we're seeing in the past year or so. So I think that we need to put a lot of efforts on breaking the barriers of awareness of anywhere between the concerns and the bad reputation that some of us got in this space in order to allow for more and more users, mass market users basically, to onboard these games. And again, just to finish up, Adrian touched this point, there are a lot of approaches to that. You can do it with saying that, all right, just connect your wallet way down the line. I mean, very deep funnel event to connect your wallet and start transaction. There are a lot of other companies that say, all right, let's just do like a seamless, very easy to onboard wallet. And that will also touch on that point when we come to attribution and analytics. But I'll save that for that. I think it would be very interesting to see what the next year or 18 months will turn up to be in terms of the solutions, because we see a lot of different approaches, but we still see stagnation when it comes to actual user growth. So hopefully one approach will win and we'll start to see those kind of user amounts ramping up in different games in different geographical locations.
Yeah, totally understand. Eric, Philip, what's your view on that? Starting with you, Eric.
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty short and simple. I mean, I've been a gamer for most of my life. Obviously, I don't have the time to game as much as I used to when I was younger. But I think this might be a little bit of a kind of touching a little bit on what Yogev and Adrian also said. Is I don't really think blockchain is really changing the way games are trying to understand the customer journey. I think at the beginning when we first started this whole blockchain gaming thing, I think people were getting a little bit too, are trying to be a little bit too fancy with the way they market the game, with the way they attract users. It's like, hey, you must own one of our NFTs to play. And then they're like, oh, shoot, no one's joining our game. No one's playing our game. Okay, let's airdrop a bunch of people free NFTs and see if they play our game. And then I think people are just coming back to the old fashioned Web2 marketing. I mean, it's worked in the past. It's worked on me before. I'm not afraid to say it. And I think really, the blockchain element, like Adrian said, it'll come later down the funnel when they are understanding whether the games they're playing, what are the contract addresses they're interacting with, what type of games they might be playing, different things like that, maybe different tokens and assets that they own. That'll lead down to different ways that they can do marketing as well. So yeah, I don't think it's, I think people are realizing that they shouldn't stray away from traditional Web2 marketing when it comes to at least the beginning, early funnel of user acquisition and getting people to test out their game. But the blockchain element will for sure be a big impact down the road.
Ending with you, Philip.
Yeah, sure. So hard to say more about that because most of the crucial things were already been said. But in terms of those differences between Web3 and Web2, I can put some light on is, for example, not only the interoperability, which is pretty crucial, as we agree all, but also having insights about the historical activities and the things about activities done by the users, not only members of your community or your company, your platform, but also your competitors. So this is pretty mind-blowing for every Web2 marketer. We are actually consulting it and providing those insights, is that whenever we are meeting with those guys as the first ones, those are pretty surprised that blockchain provides you such not only interoperability, but also possibility of getting some insights from the backwards. So you can not only understand your customer, what he does on your platform, but what also he does on different platforms and how it is actually impacting him and also the whole community, because you can see how the trends is shifting, if the activities on the different dApps are dropping or increasing. And these kind of things are pretty relatively easy to track on the on-chain side, thanks to its transparency. But on the other hand, we are still caring about this privacy of the users. So we are not, for example, providing any kind of personal data, which may put some kind of a risk in terms of the privacy issues and so on. So these historical activities are pretty crucial to also take into account, having so many data points about the users, and also understanding what was the not only off-chain but also the on-chain journey to your product. So how many other NFTs he or she minted previously, how many games he or she played, and so on and so forth. So these are the things that are pretty new for Web2 marketers as well, and probably it will take some time to actually implement all those insights as in standards, but definitely on the same page with all you guys that blockchain is changing the game in terms of the marketing funnel and customer journey for sure.
Totally. Thanks a lot, guys. And we already actually tackle a lot of different subtopics related to our main, let's say, subjects. But definitely interesting to have all of your have your opinion about this. I think really focusing on what you do, Yogev and Adrian. Let's start with you, Yogev. You're building an ecosystem with Web2, Web3 games. You have some blockchain utility within the platform as well, and you're building a community where you need to educate them about what is Web3, what is blockchain. Not what is blockchain, but what is playing a game with blockchain, thinking, ownership, and NFTs and everything. So, Yogev, starting with you, how to better understand your Web3 community?
Yeah, sure. So I have I'm not so sure about the effectiveness of a community building when it comes to a mission of getting to mass markets. So don't get me wrong, we have our community and I built community and managed communities in the past, and it's a very effective marketing and engagement tool for those super fans. But if we try, and this is our goal at least, and I think that some of the guys here share this goal with us, if we try to really break through to mass markets, then managing a community won't really help us. Obviously, we can always talk about how we approach them and how we communicate with them, and it's fairly easy. I mean, those are methods that's been around for ages, and even in the blockchain space, we saw some success there. Just speak your mind, let them speak their mind, and give them the feedback and receive the feedback they've given you. When it comes to actually educating users, it all comes down to how good the product is. If you want them to perform actions that they normally wouldn't, you need to figure out a way to do that. And the way that we look at that, and perhaps Adrian has a similar approach there, is they're doing something a lot similar with traditional games. All we need to do is translate that to blockchain games. So when we first started out, we just looked at game tokens and we said, all right, this can be not very different from a gold bar in Candy Crush, which is a very traditional casual game. And if you approach it like so and build the user experience around that, I believe that this is where we get some of the users that are actually being educated to do those transactions on a blockchain, to understand asset ownership or game asset ownership, and to start actually exchanging and creating that interoperability that Philippe talked about earlier as well. So this is our approach to that. Again, I don't want to diminish at all the power of the community. I just think that at this point of maturity of the industry, it's lacking in its ability to expand, and it's lacking in its reach. And we look at other ways that we can educate our audiences.
Adrian, do you share the same belief?
I have a slightly different opinion, but I guess that's what you want in a discussion, right? I mean, I do agree on kind of the mass market thing when you talk about, okay, it can't just be a community of very, very kind of loyal people, right? Who basically, who are basically all your player base for a game, right? But at the same time, I mean, Fortnite has about 1 million people in their Discord. Obviously, nobody knows how many of them are active, how many of them are real, and so on. But there is a large community around these games, right? So that's something that you should be looking at, especially when it comes to, okay, these are your diehard fans. These are people who will be advocates because they're both on the community side and they're obviously playing the game, right? So I think there is a little bit to that as a kind of initial core, because you don't get to to mass market. Oh yeah, I have 50 million downloads without actually having that core community, right? That's a little bit of a chicken and egg, obviously. But how blockchain fits into that and Web3 fits into that, I think is very interesting because all the data that is blockchain related is public, at least not right now. And your core community will be looking at all kinds of activities there, right? So they will be looking at multi-counters. They will be looking at all the good and the bad. Okay, this guy has traded that, and he's also a whale on that. So maybe we should get into this community and start a discussion with them, and these kinds of things, right? You will always notice when there's clusters of people who collaborate. You will always notice when there's I don't know, guilds collaborating, right? And these kinds of things. So this will be scrutinized by a large extent by a valid and vivid community, right? They will be looking at all kinds of on-chain data without even analytics tools. It's all a lot of manual work. That's what we're seeing in our current community, is that people are doing this. They're doing that a lot, right? Because they want to know what's going on. But at the same time, I think the aspect of, well, interoperability is a big word, right? That can mean, most people actually think that when we talk about interoperability, we mean, okay, yes, you can use this item in this game, in this other game. But interoperability is a lot more, right? Interoperability is, well, interoperating between different applications based on blockchain-based assets. So that can be, yes, flipping something and buying something else in another game. That can be actually just looking at what do these other people have in these other games, right? Like social status, signaling social status by showing off your stuff. So that is a very important aspect, because that will generate a lot of discoverability going down the line, right? When you say, okay, look at this cluster of players of this game, and they all also played this other game. Why is that, right? So you can actually build kind of a social graph off of these based on like just on-chain data. So you can see, oh, look, I'm following this person, like on, I'm not saying Twitter, got to say X now, right? So like on Twitter, you follow other people and you see what they do, what they like, what they retweet, right? So same can go for blockchain-based transactions. You can follow other people. You can see what they do. You can basically check out the stuff. So, oh, this person has received this awesome NFT, and it's he's a whale or she's a whale in this game, and maybe she'll become a whale in this game, right? And maybe I should check out this other game as well, and these kinds of things. So I think that will add a lot of kind of transparency and discoverability to, well, other applications through this kind of interoperability, which is not kind of the traditional interoperability in the kind of, traditional sense. So I think that there's a lot to this. It's not a one-dimensional answer, but I think that from a community perspective, we're barely scratching the surface on what can be done using NFTs and blockchain-based assets in gaming.
Definitely, I would love to have your opinion, everyone, about these because with blockchain-based games also come transparency, as you said, and you have so many things to do based on what's happening on chain, and you have something called the vampire attack, something well known based on what happened between LuxRare and OpenSea. So I would love to know your opinion about these, if we can have these kind of mindset for games as well. You kind of already answered that question on your side, Adrian. But coming back a little bit about community, on your side, Eric, obviously you're building the next generation customer insights and community management tool. Like, how do you cultivate a long-term relationship with the community of your game when we're talking about Web3 games?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty ongoing question that we'll have to continue to figure out. But basically, I think the first thing any project or game needs to do is pretty much have a promising game and not over-promising on the feature delivery or the functionality of the game. I think a very simple example, I mean, I know we're all taking some Web2 games, for example, but I'll take the Diablo 4 or the Diablo franchise in general. I think first of all, they announced the game way too early, and then it released. It kept getting delayed. So, to start off, it didn't have a great look. And then once the game launched, it was doing pretty well. But then you still had people complaining from the community about certain things. And now they have recently launched, I think, like their first season, and it's you'll see like the reviews going down and down and down. As you can tell, I'm probably a huge fan of the Diablo franchise, so that's why I'll use it as an example. But yeah, I mean, and then you have like the other side of it, where a lot of the Asian-based games really started out with a play-to-earn model, and then people in the West try to copy this model as well, and it really was just a way to get people to play the game and with the promise or the availability of making money. So that kind of, to me, I would say it kind of destroyed the approach of blockchain gaming. Basically, it should be a good game, and what people will play it just for that specific reason, and then blockchain elements will be added into the game. So yeah, previous games kind of are shaping the way we really should approach how to understand the community. So obviously, to understand the community, you really need to know who it is in order to cater to them in different ways, both on-chain and in-game or in-game analytics. So for on-chain, obviously, wallet intelligence is the most important thing you can have. Things like what other types of games they're playing, how much money they're spending on that specific game, what other tokens or NFTs do they own, which chains do they game on mostly. I think this is all very valuable information to have once you have these players, their wallet address. Again, this also goes further down the road, because I think a lot of games are coming with the approach of let's try to get as many players first. Screw. I apologize for my language here, but screw the wallet creation part. Let's just get these people playing the game, and then we'll figure out like how to integrate blockchain elements into the game. So once that's done, then we can marry that with the off-chain data. So like in-game analytics, web analytics, conversion analytics, different things like that. You can start building a deeper understanding of the community. So I know there's always going to be the argument of like staying anonymous. Web3 is all about decentralization, but I think that's really where the games need to come and say, look, we understand that Web3 is trying to be anonymous, and you can still play our game. It just won't be as much of like a customized experience. And you can still be part of our community. You can still, not partake in the blockchain elements, but it'll just be like a Web2 experience for you. But I would say it's similar to like Web2 marketing, and in that sense where, if you don't opt into like cookies or other data gathering options, you're not going to get targeted ads for things you're interested in, right? So, I think we need to find a balance between, understanding who they are on chain and then also off chain. And if we can, I think as gamers, I don't care if people have my email. I mean, for as a matter of fact, I probably have too many emails when I sign up with different games, and I'm sure we're all guilty of that in one way or another. So you have people creating tons of wallets to do things like this, right? It's not any different. But to answer the question, how do you build a long-term relationship with their community? I think the first step, and I think Philip would agree with me, is if there is a blockchain element, is if they have a wallet, understanding what they've done on chain, what kind of game they're playing, what kind of player they are, how much time they're spending on this game. Different Web3 analytics like that will help in that sense.
Totally, it's very interesting. I will come back to this security and anonymizations as well. In my opinion, as a gamer, I kind of agree with you. But we use, as a gamer, we also use with pseudonymization and not anonymization as well. So it's pretty easy for us to understand that as well. But definitely we'll come back to that specifically. But Philip, based on the question and also the answer from Eric, what kind of other information you see from the wallet activity? What kind of KPIs, let's say, information you could highlight in your platform for any game companies when we're talking about wallet activity?
Yeah, sure. Of course. So it basically depends on the type of the project we cooperate with. Even like in the gaming industry, there are plenty of different subdomains in terms of the games itself, and also the utilization or types of the utilization of the blockchain. So There are games that are utilizing NFTs for your loyalty, for some in-platform, in-game assets, spendings, and so on. So there are plenty of different ways of utilizing the blockchain itself. And of course, it impacts the way how we should actually analyze those on-chain activities of the users, because if we are, for example, analyzing some NFT drop or mint, we should probably take into account what was the average spending on those NFTs from the previous ones of this particular group of the people that are whitelisted, for example, on the list, or we're having in the community on the Discord, or maybe what was the average holding time of those NFTs, and how it differentiate between different types of the NFTs. So maybe that will also tell us that specific types of the NFTs, like in platform ones, are the longest holded ones. So it also puts some kind of a insight that you could take advantage by being just aware of that. In terms of the options of getting those on-chain data, this is also pretty broad topic, maybe for even another conversation. But in terms of pulling the data from on-chain, we have plenty of blockchains, first of all. So this is the also quite of a challenging thing to be multi-chain, to not only based on the one chain perspective and one chain historical activities, because we will be lacking a lot of the data coming from the other ones. So there are, on the other hand, plenty of opportunities in terms of analyzing blockchain transactions and activities, tracking them on the historical perspective and on the live perspective, but also in terms of technology, there are plenty of different challenges that we have to struggle with in terms of pulling those data, aggregating them, normalizing, playing with them, and so on, because potentially and eventually it will come up and will end up with some kind of a really huge use case that maybe none of us is even aware of. But having such huge volumes of data and insights about the different activities of users, like interests, preferences, those assets, and so on, is giving us a huge opportunity to take advantage of that for sure.
Yeah, totally. Totally agree with that. Coming back to this principle of one wallet doesn't mean actually one player. Yogev, it is hard to associate one wallet to one player, as one player could process multiple wallets. So do you see this as a real challenge to evaluate a real player engagement metric?
It's definitely a struggle, and I think we draw a lot of parallels to the Web2 gaming industry today, and I think there are a lot of parallels on that topic as well. And yet, most companies found solutions around that. I think that just as many users in the Web2 space, or many players in the Web2 space, have many different entities and many different social platforms and many different profiles that they interact with, there can be a same parallel can be drawn to Web3. I think that this is a phenomenon that we'll see that is sort of becoming more and more niche as we grow to mass market. And I think that this is, again, where we as an industry need to come up with solutions. So basically associating a specific wallet with a specific account, whether it's a social account, whether it's a game account, and then we can work up from there. It worked very well up until a point where the industry was disrupted, 4 years ago by Apple privacy changes. And even then, the industry found solution. It's not the same. The industry changed forever after such a huge step that Apple took with the IDFA conundrum, but we still found solution. So I think, again, and sorry for keep drawing these parallels to Web2, but I think there's a lot of just look at the history books and see what we did a decade ago when we first started out with user acquisition and basically audience targeting on Facebook, and try to replicate that to something that works today on blockchain game. And since we already lived some of those disruptions and changes, we can even start to think today or tomorrow about how these disruptions can come up in the next few years on the blockchain gaming industry, and start to come up with solutions for that as well. But I would start simple. Just start associating wallets with any kind of account. Some people won't like it. Some people are opting out of cookies and opting out from targeted ads. That's fine. Other people will like it because it will give them more control, will give them more transparency. You can even incentivize them to do so with all kinds of rewards. So this is the approach that I think a lot of people in the industry are taking. There are a lot of startups out there, a lot of solutions out there to do that very same, just connecting different social platforms and accounts to wallet addresses to get a better understanding of this matrix of data and how we can offer better products and services to our users.
Totally, Eric, on that matter, based on what Yogev just said, like, do you see that as a challenge as well? And are you working on solution to give some transparency to game companies about it is a player? Is it a player behind this wallet or a bot? Because obviously this is meaningful information for games.
Yeah. I think whether it's a real player, whether it's a bot, I think at least for now there hasn't been too much progress towards that. I know Nansen is trying to tackle that with AI bot detection. So a little bit about like my previous role. We actually worked with one of the co-founders it was a Web2 fraud analytics company. So we actually worked with a lot of gaming studios to be able to discern the difference between the UA traffic coming in that are bots and the ones that are not. So, with the traditional user acquisition model in Web2, you basically pay per like click or install or whatever you want to call the conversion rate. And a lot of these companies basically just farmed fake traffic and then charged the game a lot of money. So they needed a way to figure out like, how do we show them proof that this is a bot? And how do we pretty much not pay like half of what we were charged? So kind of bringing that to Web3, we are basically using a non-traditional AI model. So traditionally, what people would normally do is basically tell the AI what to look for within the data, and then it goes and searches and see if there's anything matching the rules that you have taught it. So basically, we're kind of doing a different approach where it's a bit of a deep learning model. I won't go in too much into this, but basically, the AI is going in without any rules that it's supposed to be looking for, and basically just isolates different groups of users, whether it could be good users, could be bad users, but basically gives you a reason as to why these people are grouped in together. Something as simple as telling the AI to look for new wallets created within the last 2 months or something like that. I don't think that's a good metric to use. It's going to cause a lot of false positives. I may be a brand new Web3 gamer, or I may be a seasoned Web3 gamer where I need to create multiple wallets to get like free assets or different things like that. So it's not necessarily a good measure. That's just a very simple example, obviously. But I think, all the data is very, very readily available for anyone to look at. The challenge is aggregating the data, presenting it in an understandable format, and not requiring someone to query a database in order to get to the insights. So, a lot of people in Web3, especially like gaming studios, they're not really, I would say, marketing people. They're all trying to build in Web3, and they don't really understand coding. I simply don't understand the coding part of data, right? And then there's different silos of data. There's the on-chain data, there's the off-chain data, and then there's also web analytics, different things like that. So how do we combine all of these to really understand what kind of player this is? Again, this goes back to the community and understanding them. It's if they want to opt into this kind of information sharing, then it's going to provide them the best experience. But if they don't, they're not going to get that personalized experience. And especially if they're a bot, then they're definitely not getting any sort of experience when it comes to the marketing side. But yeah, I think, in general, we're noticing that at least within the Web2 space, bots were a huge problem. It's starting to showcase here in Web3. More, I would say it's more prominent in DeFi, but it's also happening in gaming where these people are just trying to farm free tokens, NFTs, gaming assets, whatever it may be, and not becoming or converting into real gamers. And that's really what these people are trying to do with these different marketing campaigns. So yeah, I mean, in general, it's not a huge problem yet, but I know this will be a big problem because Web2 users, or I mean, just in general, like bots are going to find ways to attack different platforms to potentially try to farm the most money out of these games or in general Web3 projects.
No, totally understand. That's a perfect answer, actually. Going back to interoperability, because each one of you actually talk about that, but starting with you, Adrian, I feel like, and I kind of understand why, based on what you do with Wombat and the application and what you could have as well. But it seems like you are obsessed about what's happening cross games in terms of analytics, in terms of user engagement, relying on maybe what's happening on chain as well. So could you explain what you are expecting about the blockchain technology, about anything you could do, and any kind of data you could get from the player engagement across platform, across games?
Wow. And I'm supposed to answer that in a short 2 minutes or so.
I know.
That's a big one.
I know when I started asking the question to you, I was like, should I? But let's give it a try.
All right, I'll just give like 2 or 3 examples, because what we think is basically that gamers, and we're talking real gamers, right? We're not talking necessarily people who just want to make money. Gamers traditionally don't want to be making money by playing games, right? They're typically net negative on their games in pretty much 100% of their cases. So we're talking about gamers, and gamers love gaming. They love gamification as well, right? So gamifying games using blockchain-based assets is something that has a really big potential, right? And this can go as far as these NFTs or these blockchain-based assets actually being games themselves without anyone actually really noticing it, right? So one thing that we're currently working on is basically just an NFT-based game. It's like, we don't even have to call it a game, but effectively it is, right? So we're basically gamifying trading volume, right? So the more that an NFT gets traded, the cooler it looks, the bigger it is, and the more utility it will have, right? So it will basically level up by being traded. And that's stuff that goes on entirely outside of the game itself, right? So imagine you have whatever. Let's use an example of the Web3 version of Stardew Valley, right? And you have a tree, and the tree grows bigger by getting traded on a marketplace, right? And that's obviously on-chain data that you use in order to determine the value of the NFT of this asset within the game. And then it's a bigger tree. It yields more whatever fruit, whatever, right? And it's just better, right? So that's a great example. There's a lot of these examples that, like I said earlier, we're barely scratching the surface with these kinds of things, right? There's going to be a lot of examples of what else we can do, from blending assets, from upgrading them on-chain, from using on-chain data to put that, like using oracles or non-oracles, whatever, to improve your experience, right? There's been a lot of collabs. Obviously, collabs are nothing new in Web3, right? But in Web3, it's much, much easier to do them because you can basically identify any player of game X by looking at their wallets. You can basically, I know that's not easy on EVMs, but with indexing, you can look at, okay, give me all the accounts, all the blockchain wallets that own at least 3 NFTs of that type, and I will drop this other type of NFT to them. right? So just as a cross promo, whatever, right? So there's a lot of possibilities there, and yeah, I don't even know like what else to say. Because there's so much, and we could go on with that for hours and hours of what can be done. And we've been seeing so much of that already unfolding within the last 2 or 3 years since we started doing NFTs across games, right? And as a thing that's basically added on top of games, we've been seeing a lot of that unfolding in terms of gamification on chain and off chain, but it really deepens the experience for everyone. It deepens the experience in those games. It fosters loyalty. We can see that engagement rates in those games where we add NFTs on top are 40 to 80% higher than usual. It's crazy, right? It's stuff that none of the traditional Web2 publishers has ever seen before. That is through the power of blockchain-based assets like NFTs. So I think that this is something that we all collectively should be spending more time on. I think that having you guys, Philip, Eric, building Web3 analytics platforms, this is exactly where we need to go. I think that multi-counting and like all kinds of fraud, I'm not even talking about bots. Bots are a different story, right? But this whole multi-counting civil attack thing, that's going to be something that's going to follow us for the next 5 to 10 years, which was going to have to be solved mostly by economical mechanics, not as much technical. I think technical is going to be really hard. It's going to be a rat race with all these people. They have unlimited resources. There's hundreds of millions, billions of people who have basically unlimited time, unlimited resources to like get away with it, right? So that's going to be a bad race for all of us. But that is all due to the on-chain nature of these assets, right? So I think, we're still at the beginning of it all, and I'm really curious about all the stuff that will come up within the next 3 or 5 years. Once we have all the big games with tens of millions of users rather than just a few 100,000.
Eric, please.
Yeah, I guess just something to add to that. So, Adrian, when you said in the beginning, not gamers don't really want to make money playing a game. I would beg to differ. I think there's different groups of gamers. You have the ones that are playing the game to enjoy the game. Obviously, that's all the goal. That's the goal of all the games. But I think a really good example of something that I almost never thought of until I got into Web3 space is, I'm not sure if all of you played Diablo 3 when it first released, but they released something with that game called the Auction House, which essentially lets you sell your items for real money. So when that first came out, I was like, oh, wow. So the more I play, then I can actually find these better items and I can actually make some money off this game. To me, being like an adult gamer, obviously, one, I enjoy games in general, but two, like, is there a way for me to monetize my time? So I thought that was a pretty cool addition to it, but they took it down very quickly because there's some issues with it. But I think, there are going to be those gamers that want to play and spend their time and then potentially have the chance to earn the money to, a little bit of reward at the end, right? I think, when it comes to like MMORPG gamers or maybe ARPG gamers, those kind of fall into that bucket. And then you have the people playing like the console games, Final Fantasy, the Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, those kind of games, that they play to progress through the game, and that's rewarding to them. So there's definitely going to be different elements built into the different type of games, whether it's going to be like the RPGs or maybe FPS, different things like that. Obviously, Counter-Strike and Fortnite, they have these different skins that are thousands and thousands of dollars, which is still unbelievable to me when you're just buying something that's digital. But people are willing to spend this money on it. People are willing to grind and make that money through the game. So I think different games are going to require different features into it, and some do make sense to have a play to earn that's built into part of it. But again, that's going to lead to, Adrian, what you just mentioned as well, a lot of Sybil attacks, spot problems, people trying to farm the game. They have nothing better to do and trying to ruin the game and ruin the economy of the games. So, we'll see how that turns out into the future.
totally share your opinion on that, and I won't be long because we don't have much time left. But obviously, I'm a big player. So you're a big player of Diablo. I'm a big player. I was a big player of World of Warcraft, and sometimes you see some players they enjoy staying at the auction house rather than just playing with their friends, with warriors and mage and everything. So totally understand your opinion on that. Maybe as a last question, what I wanted to ask you, and starting with you, Yogev, in your opinion, it's a very broad question. It could be also related to something you already said before, but what are the next challenges that lie ahead for Web3 gaming analytics, in your opinion?
Oh yeah. I think that again, coming back to the main goal, as we see it, as most of our partners and investors see it as well, which is reaching the mass audiences. I think that there's still a lot of segmentations to be done, and I think we would, with the proper tool, we as marketeers can do a lot better job in converting those mass markets into blockchain games once we get a better understanding of the different audiences. So that obviously starts with in-game analytics combined with blockchain analytics, and I think that Eric alluded to that earlier. So basically, the more data that we can get while still being reasonable with our privacy concerns, and while still being reasonable with some of the other features that we want to highlight when using blockchain as a general industry. So the more we can get there, the better decisions we would be able to make. Sorry if it's too general of an answer, but it's a big question. But yeah, it's basically looking into understanding the audiences and try to target the next wave of adopters of these games. And obviously, these game developers are going to do a lot of work on their end as well. This is something that really hasn't started recently. We heard a lot of conversation about this even 2 and 3 years ago, that people saw some success. And I think that, again, Adrian, you talked about it, about the play to earn. A lot of games saw a lot of success there, but there wasn't really a gamification. There wasn't really a game, like proper game behind it. And once we shifted from that, and once we, again, we, the game developers community, started to shift from that, started to think about, all right, how do we create an actual game that worked? Things started to pull together. So combine the efforts of these wonderful people who make, again, awesome games, and they try to think of different ways of incorporating blockchain technologies and blockchain incentives into that, and combined with some of the things that Eric and Philippe are here are working on in terms of in-game analytics and blockchain data that can be combined with it. Taking all these parts together, that for me as a marketeer, when I look at the big picture here and I say, all right, this is something that we can work with, and this is something that we can help bring in the next few millions of users into these games.
Awesome, guys. You know, I would have loved to continue our conversation because we didn't tackle much other topic, like you say, Yogev, about security and other stuff as well, anonymization and everything. So thanks again for your time. Definitely up for a next edition of this panel if you feel the need to, and we can tackle a very specific topic related to this blockchain gaming analytics topic. So again, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure to have you today. So I wish you a very good end of the day, beginning of the day, depending on where you are. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Thanks everyone.
Bye bye, guys.